Now again we focus on the pen tool, but this time we'll be using it to develop curves. So to create a curve, we select the pen tool as before, and we click onto the canvas to make an anchor point. Once we have this, we click across to make another anchor point. Now, holding down the left mouse button, we can create a curve by pulling downwards. Now you'll see I have a line extending out on the right hand side, which varies in size according to the location of the cursor. This is what's known as a handle. You can picture a handle as a fishing rod, almost as if it's pulling up the curve the further away it gets from it, as you can see on the left hand side of the handle. So we can draw another to demonstrate it further. There we see the handle at the bottom pulling down the curve towards the bottom. If we click another anchor point to the right, we see we get another curve with the handle at the top pulling the curve upwards. If we also click upon this anchor point, we can draw a corner. So this is a sharp corner as opposed to a curve. Likewise, we click this anchor point and we can go across to draw a line. Using the smart guides, we can see where the intersect is, and we'll place an anchor point to the left. And we close the shape by clicking the original anchor point. So there we have a shape composed of both curves and lines. We can go on to manipulate the anchor point handles of a curve even after the shape is drawn. To do this, we select the direct selection tool, we click and drag across the entire shape. This shows us the anchor points of the shape. Click upon one of the anchor points and this will show the handles of all anchor points of the shape. So now we can click the handle to manipulate the shape. Likewise, we can do the same of the bottom handle on the left to manipulate it in that way. As described before, you can see the curves almost being drawn magnetically to the handle point. As described previously, we can also add anchor points to the shape by selecting the pen tool flyout, add anchor point tool, and clicking on the path of the shape. With the anchor point added, we can select the direct selection tool, click upon the anchor point, and we can manipulate the handles of the new anchor point. Besides this, we can also move the anchor points in their entirety by clicking the anchor point. Once done, we can now use the handles to make further adjustments, whilst the anchor point remains fixed in its new position. Here we'll have a snake. This is to be used as an exercise only. The final product isn't meant to represent the snake as you see it there. We aren't illustrating a snake, it's merely to practice curves. So we'll use this snake to develop curves around its body and also its head, and then we'll go on to refine those curves to get as near perfect as we can. So to start out, we reduce the opacity in the transparency panel down to 50%. This way we can see behind where we're tracing. With that done, if we also go to the layers panel and click the arrow on our layer and click the box next to the eye symbol, this will lock it down so it doesn't move as we're working. So to begin, we select the pen tool, and I always like to start on a corner point. In this case it's going to be the edge of the image. This is because it makes for an easy reference point, and it also relieves the difficulties of joining two curved paths. So we click on the edge of the image, which will mark our first anchor point. Holding shift, clicking the left mouse button, we set our next anchor point. And we click here and we move the mouse very slightly. This tells Illustrator that we're going to be using this anchor point as a curve rather than a corner. So always remember, when you click, to move the mouse ever so slightly so that you get your handles, as you can see here. So we'll place that there. Don't focus on the shape too much at the moment. The most important thing is setting the anchor point. This anchor point that we've set is on the side, so this is classed as a wall. The next one which we're going to set is above. This one is classed as a ceiling anchor point. The next again is on the side, also a wall anchor point. Set one at the bottom again, which is a floor anchor point. Set one at the side. Remember the drag after the click to tell Illustrator it's going to be a curve. And here we'll come to a point which is a corner as opposed to a curve. We click the anchor point, draw another. Now for the head. For the head we're going to be a bit more precise, but as you can see, the tail, I'm going to show you how we go on to make corrections afterwards. You'll see now that we'll reach a point where we can't see the shape underneath. So this is where we use the transparency panel and we take our opacity down to around 35 so we can see behind the shape that we're drawing. So now we'll come on to the curves again. Set one here. Set one here. Whilst dragging to get our handles. Set one here. Set one above. And that will complete the anchor point. So this is far from perfect, so now we're going to use the direct selection tool as discussed before to manipulate the handles of each anchor point so that it fits more perfectly into the picture behind. So clicking on this anchor point, we're going to move the handle out so that it matches the snake behind. Likewise, we're going to use the handle point on the right of the same anchor point to bring that out to match the picture behind. Clicking the anchor point above, we're going to manipulate the handle to the right of that to match the snake behind. Likewise, we're going to do an adjustment with the left. You see this also has a seesaw effect on the other side of the handle. Going to manipulate the anchor point at the edge using the right handle, and there we go, matching the snake behind. Now we move on to this one, manipulating the bottom handle to bring that down. Now we click on this one using the left handle to bring this up. We go. Now this handle, this anchor point rather, the bottom handle to bring this down. Clicking this, needs a slight adjustment. And its top handle, bringing up. There we have it. Now this anchor point is a corner rather than a curve, as you can see by its sharp right angle. So now we're going to go on to convert this into a curve as it should be. It's now at a corner because I forgot to click and drag to tell Illustrator that it was going to be a curve. This is where our convert anchor point tool comes into play. So if we go to the pen, hold down left mouse button, we get the fly out. At the very bottom we have convert anchor point tool. Selecting that and moving over to the anchor point, which is currently a corner, clicking upon it and dragging will now convert that to a curve anchor point with the handles. We can now select direct selection tool and continue as before. Moving those into alignment. Using the top handle for further adjustments. Perhaps the anchor point needs to be moved across slightly, so we click on the anchor point, move that across. Now the snake is quite a complex series of curves, so when I switch off the photograph behind, you will see some things that possibly don't look correct. Curves don't flow as well as they should, so I do suggest that you do a final cleanup process as I'm about to show. So to see the result and to start the cleanup process, we go to our layers panel and we click the eye symbol to the left of the photograph. As you can see, although it looks okay at first glance, these curves don't flow as well as they should, so we'll go on and manipulate these so that they look a lot better. We can turn this back up to full opacity in the transparency panel now that we've finished tracing. It's really up to yourself. And looking at the shape, the first one that I want to fix is up here because there's a bit of a hump and it doesn't flow as well as I'd like. So with the direct selection tool selected, I want to click upon that anchor point so that we get the handles once more, and I'm going to use the left handle to manipulate this curve so that it flows better. Click on the canvas to deselect. There, that's a fixed curve. Next up, I'd like to work upon this section to give this a more flowing curve. So selecting the shape by left clicking and dragging across, we can see all the anchor points. With the direct selection tool, we can click on this anchor point so that we can use the handles to bring this in to make this flow better. Likewise, the anchor point above can be manipulated and brought down. Clicking the canvas, we can see the result. Zooming into the head of the snake, you'll see quite a few things that don't flow, including the top of the head, the mouth, and the bottom of the head at the back. So we'll go on to fix these. First of all, we'll click on this anchor point and we'll see that it's only got one handle and it's sharp at its bottom edge. So to fix this, we'll select the convert anchor point tool once again. We click on the anchor and we drag it down. Now we'll see we've got two handles. So dragging it down, deselecting by clicking on the canvas, or rather changing the tool and clicking on the canvas, we'll see that this now flows. Likewise, we're going to click into the head using the direct selection tool on this anchor point. We see that this anchor point only has one handle because it has a corner edge assigned. So to fix this, we go to the convert anchor point tool, click the anchor point, move the mouse to get both handles, and we can now manipulate it into a shape that we want that flows. There we go. So we go to fix the top of the head, direct selection tool, select the anchor point and manipulate the handles. Now there's a hump here where it could be straight, so this tells us we can delete this anchor point. So to do that, we select delete anchor point in the flyout. We go over to the shape and we select delete anchor point. So there we have it, a more flowing shape. This could be smoothened off further by manipulating this anchor point once again with the handles. There we go. This also could be fixed to be smoother. And we take that handle out there. Fix this anchor point. No, rather, we'll remove this anchor point. And we'll use the handle here to make it blend. There we go. Convert this anchor point to a curve. There we have it. That's the flowing curve in the mouth, the flowing curve up top and below. To go into further detail, something else which stands out is this curve here. To remedy this, we'll select the direct selection tool, click the anchor point here, bring this handle down, and I'm also going to click this handle here, anchor point rather, to raise the handle further up. Deselect, fixed. Now you may also note that this has reverted back somehow, maybe an error in my videos, but this only gives us an opportunity to explore it again. So we click upon this and click the anchor point, and we move the left handle and deselect. There we go. Now we could also go on to fix this, which looks out of place, by selecting the direct selection tool, clicking on its anchor and manipulating the bottom handle so this too flows more smoothly. This refining process could go on for quite a while depending on how perfect you want to make your image. This example, the snake, does represent quite a complex picture to be tracing with curves, especially if you're a beginner. The pen tool is something that requires time and patience to master. As I've mentioned, this snake image could be refined further and further, so it isn't something you can just use and expect perfection to spring from. There are additional tutorials available for the pen tool in Illustrator throughout the internet, so I would make use of those. But as you design simple logos, obviously the demands for your pen will be simple as well. I do, however, suggest that you make an immediate start in learning the pen tool, because it is the main tool of Illustrator, and as you progress in logo design, you'll find yourself using the pen tool time and time again.